It was a Tuesday evening, and I was already regretting my decision to attend the annual neighborhood potluck. You know the kind, where the food is questionable, the small talk is excruciating, and everyone pretends to enjoy Aunt Edna's infamous Jell-O salad that looks like it could double as a science experiment. But when my best friend, Jess, insisted I come along, I couldn't say no. She had a way of making her plans sound like an irresistible adventure, even when they were anything but. As I stepped into the community center, I immediately tripped over a rogue chair leg, sending my purse flying and its contents scattering across the floor like confetti at a particularly chaotic parade. My face turned a shade of red that could only be described as tomato, while I scrambled to collect my belongings, lip balm, a crumpled grocery list, and a questionable snack that I had forgotten about from last week. Just my luck, nice entrance. Jess called out from across the room, her laughter ringing out like music. She was effortlessly charming, wearing a smile that could light up the dullest of gatherings. Meanwhile, I was busy wishing for a trapdoor to swallow me whole. After what felt like an eternity of awkwardly gathering my things and trying to maintain some semblance of dignity, I finally made it to the buffet table. The spread was as eclectic as ever. A half-eaten lasagna that looked like it had seen better days, an assortment of store-bought cookies that were probably older than I was, and of course, Aunt Edna's Jell-O salad in all its wobbly glory. As I stood there contemplating whether to risk my taste buds on the lasagna or just stick with cookies, because who doesn't love cookies, I noticed someone out of the corner of my eye. She was standing by the punch bowl, her laughter infectious as she chatted with a group of neighbors. Her name was Mia, Jess's mom. Mia had this magnetic energy about her. She was the kind of person who could light up a room just by walking into it. With her bright eyes and warm smile, she seemed to embody everything that made life feel vibrant and alive. It was hard not to feel a little envious as I watched her effortlessly connect with everyone around her while I stood there in my awkward bubble, but then something unexpected happened. As Mia poured herself a cup of punch, let's be honest, probably spiked with something stronger than just fruit juice, I caught sight of her expression shifting. One moment she was laughing, the next, her smile faltered, and her eyes glistened with unshed tears. My heart sank that I knew this wasn't just about the punch, something deeper was going on. And before I could overthink it, which is my specialty, I found myself walking over to her with all the grace of a newborn giraffe. "Hey," I said awkwardly, trying to channel all my charm into one simple word. "Are you okay?" Mia looked up at me, surprise flickering across her face before she quickly wiped away a tear with the back of her hand. "Oh. It's nothing really," she replied, but there was an unmistakable tremor in her voice that I wasn't buying it. "You know," I said, attempting to inject some levity into the situation despite my own social ineptitude, "if you need someone to distract you from whatever's bothering you, I'm basically an expert in awkward humor." She chuckled softly at that, and for a moment, the weight in her eyes lifted just slightly. "You're sweet," Mia said with a hint of gratitude mingled with sadness that I gestured toward the buffet table dramatically. "I mean, look at this feast. Who wouldn't want to talk about Aunt Edna's Jell-O salad? It's practically begging for commentary." Mia laughed again, a genuine sound that warmed me from the inside out, and suddenly we were off on a tangent about how no one really understood Jell-O salads or why they were still being served at potlucks in 2025. As we talked and joked about our shared disdain for questionable culinary choices, I felt an unexpected connection forming between us. A blend of humor and vulnerability that made me forget about my own awkwardness for just a moment, but then Jess appeared out of nowhere with her usual flair for dramatic timing. "Mom! There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you," she exclaimed before turning to me with an exaggerated wink. "And look who's stealing your spotlight." Mia rolled her eyes playfully at Jess while I tried not to blush too fiercely at being called out. "I wasn't stealing anything," I protested lightly. "Just trying to save your mom from Aunt Edna's culinary horrors." Jess grinned wide before turning serious for just a moment. "Thanks for checking in on her," she said softly before pulling Mia into an embrace that in that instant, something shifted within me, an urge to help Mia more than just by making jokes about Jell-O salads. There was something deeper beneath her laughter that intrigued me. As we settled back into light-hearted banter about party mishaps and culinary catastrophes, little did I know this encounter would set off a chain reaction leading to moments both hilarious and heartfelt, a journey filled with unexpected twists that would change everything for both Mia and me. As the evening wore on, the potluck transformed into a cacophony of laughter, clinking dishes, and the occasional outburst of karaoke, because apparently, nothing says community bonding like off-key renditions of 80s ballads. I was still nursing my punch, trying to avoid any further mishaps, when I noticed Mia standing near the dessert table, eyeing a particularly dubious-looking cake. "Is that cake even safe to eat?" I called out, unable to resist the urge to tease her. "I mean, it looks like it might bite back." Mia turned to me, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Oh, come on. It's probably just misunderstood. Maybe it's a cake with a complex backstory." She leaned in conspiratorially. "You know, like a tragic hero in a Shakespearean play." I laughed, imagining a cake with existential dilemmas and unfulfilled dreams. "Right. To eat or not to eat, that is the question." "Exactly," she replied, her laughter ringing out like music. "But really, do you think it's worth the risk?" "Only one way to find out," I said dramatically as I approached the cake. With exaggerated caution, I picked up a fork and took a small bite. The flavor exploded in my mouth, sweet but oddly reminiscent of cardboard. "Oh wow," I said through a mouthful of what could only be described as an ambitious disaster. "This is definitely not going on my list of life's greatest pleasures." Mia burst into laughter, and I couldn't help but join in. There was something about her laughter that made everything else fade away, the awkwardness of the potluck, my earlier embarrassment, even my own self-consciousness. "Okay, you're right," she admitted between giggles. "That was a terrible idea. Let's just say it's an acquired taste," I replied with a wink. We spent the next few moments trading bites of questionable desserts, each one more ridiculous than the last, and laughing at our culinary bravery. It was in those shared moments that I felt an unexpected connection growing between us. We were two people navigating this bizarre social landscape together, united by our mutual disdain for poorly executed baked goods. Just then, Jess reappeared at our side with a plate piled high with cookies. "What are you two up to?" she asked suspiciously. "Just bonding over our shared love for whatever this is," I said, gesturing toward the dessert table with mock seriousness. Mia leaned in closer to Jess and whispered conspiratorially, "She's trying to convince me that eating this cake is a rite of passage." Jess raised an eyebrow at me before bursting into laughter. "Good luck with that. You might need to call in reinforcements after that bite." "Oh please," I replied playfully. "I've survived far worse things than this cake." I glanced at Mia and added with a smirk, "Like my last date." Mia's eyes widened in curiosity. "Oh. Do tell." I hesitated for just a moment before launching into an exaggerated recounting of my last disastrous date, a mix-up involving an overly enthusiastic waiter who mistook my order for an exotic dish featuring snails and my date's profound inability to understand basic social cues. By the end of the night, I said dramatically, I was convinced that snails were plotting against me. Mia doubled over with laughter while Jess shook her head in disbelief. "You have the worst luck," she exclaimed. "I know." I replied with mock despair. "It's like the universe has decided that my romantic life should be one long comedy sketch." Mia looked at me thoughtfully for a moment before breaking into another smile. "You know," she said slowly, "I think you might be onto something there. Maybe we should start a support group for people whose lives resemble sitcoms." "Only if we can include snacks," I replied instantly. "And maybe some karaoke for good measure." "Deal," she laughed. As we continued to banter back and forth about our shared misadventures in dating and culinary disasters, I began to notice how easy it felt to talk to her, how natural our chemistry was becoming. It was as if we were two puzzle pieces fitting together perfectly despite our quirks and flaws. At one point during our conversation, Jess excused herself to grab more cookies, because clearly one plate wasn't enough, leaving Mia and me alone for just a moment. "So," Mia began, her tone shifting slightly as she leaned closer. What do you do when you're not navigating potluck disasters? I hesitated for just a second before diving into my usual spiel about being an aspiring writer, how I loved crafting stories filled with humor and heart but often found myself stuck in writer's block. Hell, I get it, Mia said empathetically. Sometimes it feels like there are too many ideas swirling around in your head but none of them want to come out right. Exactly. I exclaimed, grateful for her understanding. It's like trying to catch butterflies with your bare hands, they're beautiful but elusive. She smiled knowingly at that, her expression warm and inviting, and suddenly it felt as though we were sharing something deeper than just jokes about bad food or awkward dates. Before I could think too much about it, which is always dangerous, I blurted out, what about you? What do you do when you're not charming everyone at potlucks? Mia chuckled softly before glancing away momentarily as if considering how much to share. Well, she began slowly, I work as an art teacher at the local community center. Her eyes lit up as she spoke about her passion for creativity and how she loved helping others express themselves through art. That sounds amazing. I said, genuinely impressed. I can barely draw stick figures without them looking like they've been through some sort of existential crisis. She laughed again, a sound that made my heart flutter unexpectedly, and then added playfully, maybe you should take one of my classes. We could bond over our mutual lack of artistic talent. I'd be down for that, I replied quickly before realizing how eager I sounded. But there was something about Mia that made me want to say yes to everything, her warmth, her humor, it all felt so refreshingly genuine. Just then Jess returned with more cookies and interrupted our moment with her usual flair for the dramatic. What did I miss? She asked innocently. Oh, nothing much, Mia replied smoothly while shooting me a sly glance that made my heart race just a little faster. Just planning our future art class together. Jess raised an eyebrow at us both before smirking knowingly. Well then. Looks like someone has found their new best friend. I shot Jess a playful glare while trying not to blush too fiercely at her implication, but deep down inside, there was something thrilling about the idea of spending more time with Mia. As we settled back into easy conversation filled with laughter and playful teasing once again, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something special, a connection forged over Jell-O salads and ridiculous cakes that might just lead us somewhere unexpected. After the potluck, I found myself thinking about Mia more than I ever expected. Between the laughter we shared over questionable desserts and our easy banter, it felt like something had shifted in the air, a spark that hinted at the potential for something deeper. So, when Jess suggested a cooking night at their house the following weekend, I jumped at the chance. Are you sure you want to do this? Jess asked, eyeing me suspiciously as I gathered my ingredients. You know how our last cooking adventure turned out. I shrugged, trying to play it cool. What could possibly go wrong? It's just a simple pasta dish. Besides, Mia and I have already bonded over our mutual disdain for culinary disasters. This will be fun. Jess rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. Alright, but if you burn down the kitchen, I'm blaming you. The day of the cooking adventure arrived, and I found myself standing in Jess's kitchen with an array of ingredients spread out before me, pasta, tomatoes, garlic, and an assortment of spices that I hoped would mask any potential mistakes. Mia arrived shortly after, her presence lighting up the room, ready to create a masterpiece. She asked with a playful grin, more like a potential disaster. I replied with a laugh. But hey, at least we'll have a good story to tell. We got started by chopping vegetables, an activity that quickly devolved into a competition to see who could make the biggest mess. Mia was surprisingly adept with a knife, while I struggled to keep my fingers intact. You know, she said teasingly as she effortlessly diced tomatoes, if you keep chopping like that, we might need to call in a medic. Haha, I shot back, trying to concentrate on my own chopping technique while simultaneously glancing at her in admiration. I'm just trying to add some flair to my cooking style. Before long, we were both laughing so hard that tears streamed down our faces, partly from the onions and partly from our ridiculous attempts at culinary prowess. The kitchen was filled with a delightful chaos of flour dust and vegetable scraps. As we moved on to boiling the pasta, things took an unexpected turn. "Okay," Mia said with mock seriousness as she stirred the pot. "What's our secret ingredient?" I thought for a moment before responding dramatically. "Love. And maybe a sprinkle of chaos." She chuckled but then turned serious for a moment. "You know," she said quietly, "cooking always reminds me of my mom. She used to say that food brings people together, and it's true." Her words hung in the air for a moment as I processed them. "Yeah," I replied softly. "My mom used to say something similar. She loved hosting dinner parties and making everyone feel welcome." Mia smiled wistfully before adding, "I miss those days sometimes." In that moment of vulnerability, I felt closer to her than ever before, like we were sharing not just food but pieces of ourselves. It was refreshing and grounding all at once. Just then, Jess burst into the kitchen with an armful of snacks. "What's this? A cooking class or a comedy show?" she quipped as she surveyed our chaotic setup. "Both," Mia replied without missing a beat. "We're creating culinary art here." "More like culinary chaos," Jess shot back playfully as she set down her snacks and grabbed a handful of flour from the counter to throw at us. "Oh no." I squealed as I ducked away just in time, but not before Mia got hit squarely in the face with flour. "Jess!" Mia exclaimed through peals of laughter as she wiped her face clean. "You're going to pay for that." I couldn't help but join in on the laughter as they engaged in an impromptu flour fight that quickly escalated into full-blown chaos, flour flying everywhere and giggles echoing through the kitchen. After what felt like an eternity of laughter and floury mischief, we finally managed to regain some semblance of order and get back to cooking. Though now we were covered in flour and giggles rather than stress. As we waited for the pasta to finish boiling, we decided it was time for some taste testing. We each grabbed spoons and began sampling our sauce, a concoction that was equal parts delicious and questionable. Mia said thoughtfully after tasting it. "It needs more spice. What do you think?" I nodded vigorously while trying not to choke on my own taste test. "Definitely. More spice equals more fun." With that, we proceeded to dump an unmeasured amount of red pepper flakes into our sauce, only realizing too late that perhaps we had gone overboard when it turned fiery red. "Oh," Mia said nervously as she took another taste test and immediately fanned her mouth. "That's spicy. Spicy is good. It adds character." I insisted while reaching for another spoonful, but after one more taste test from both of us, we quickly agreed that perhaps we had crossed into danger zone territory. As we laughed about our culinary misadventures again, Jess returned from her snack run with wide eyes. "What happened? Did you set off the smoke alarm?" "No smoke alarms yet," Mia replied cheerfully despite her reddening cheeks from the spice overload. At that moment, Jess decided it was time for some friendly conflict, a playful argument about whether or not we should attempt salvage operations on our sauce or start fresh. "I say we embrace the chaos," I declared dramatically while waving my spoon around like a conductor leading an orchestra. Mia chimed in enthusiastically, "Yes. Let's make this dish legendary." Jess raised an eyebrow skeptically but couldn't suppress her smile as she watched us get swept up in our enthusiasm. "Fine. But if anyone ends up crying because it's too spicy, well, just remember who suggested this madness." With renewed determination, and slightly teary eyes, we added more tomatoes and cream in an attempt to balance out the spice while still keeping our original concoction intact. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, we plated our masterpiece, an explosion of colors that looked somewhat edible despite its chaotic origins. As we sat down together at Jess's dining table, still giggling over our culinary journey, I couldn't help but feel grateful for this unexpected connection with Mia. It wasn't just about cooking, it was about sharing moments filled with laughter and vulnerability, a reminder that sometimes life's messiest moments lead to the most beautiful memories. Just then, Jess raised her glass of sparkling water dramatically as if preparing for a toast to culinary disasters and new friendships. We clinked glasses together before diving into our creation, and though it was far from perfect, the spice level could probably be classified as hazardous. Every bite was filled with laughter and warmth. As we finished dinner amidst playful banter about who would take home leftovers, which were definitely not going anywhere near my kitchen, I realized how much this evening meant to me, and how much more I wanted to explore this connection with Mia. The night ended with us sprawled on Jess's couch watching terrible rom-coms while debating which characters deserved their happy endings. And amidst all the laughter and playful arguments about fictional love lives, something inside me began to bloom, a feeling that maybe there was something special waiting just beneath the surface between me and Mia. As the weeks rolled on, Mia and I fell into an easy rhythm that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Our cooking nights became a regular occurrence, each one more chaotic than the last, filled with laughter, flour fights, and culinary experiments that often bordered on the absurd. But beneath the playful banter and shared desserts, I could feel something deeper growing between us, a connection that was both thrilling and daunting. One Friday evening, we decided to take our culinary adventures outdoors for a picnic in the park. Jess had graciously volunteered to stay home and binge-watch her favorite series, leaving Mia and me to enjoy a beautiful sunset while attempting to assemble a gourmet charcuterie board. With a basket filled with cheeses, fruits, crackers, and an assortment of spreads, and yes, some questionable leftovers from our last cooking escapade, we set out to find the perfect spot that we finally settled under a sprawling oak tree, the sun casting a warm glow over everything. As we laid out our spread, I couldn't help but steal glances at Mia. She looked radiant, her laughter mingling with the breeze as she arranged everything just so. It was in moments like these that I felt my heart race at an alarming rate. "Okay," she said with a grin, "let's see what culinary magic we can create this time." I chuckled nervously as I pulled out a particularly odd-looking cheese that we had picked up on a whim. "This one's called mystery cheese. I have no idea what it is or if it's even edible." Mia raised an eyebrow playfully. "Well, it's either going to be amazing or we'll end up regretting our life choices. Let's embrace the chaos," I replied with mock enthusiasm as we both took a bite. To my surprise, it wasn't half bad, though it certainly had a flavor profile that could only be described as acquired. As we munched on our spread and shared stories about our most embarrassing moments, which seemed to be an endless supply, I felt the familiar flutter of nerves in my stomach. The more time I spent with Mia, the more I found myself grappling with feelings I hadn't fully acknowledged yet, feelings that were blossoming into something deeper than friendship. "Mia," I said suddenly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can I ask you something?" Her expression shifted from playful to curious as she turned to face me fully. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I hesitated for just a moment before plunging forward. "Do you ever think about, well, what happens next? Like after all this fun and chaos?" She looked thoughtful for a moment before responding. "I guess it depends on what you mean by next. Are you talking about life plans or?" Her voice trailed off as she studied my face. "More like feelings," I admitted awkwardly, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. "I mean, sometimes I feel like there's something more between us than just friendship." Mia's eyes widened slightly as she processed my words. "Oh," she said softly, her voice tinged with surprise. Just then, a rogue squirrel decided to make its entrance by darting through our picnic area in pursuit of an acorn, causing me to jump and spill some of our carefully arranged snacks everywhere. "Great timing," I exclaimed as the squirrel scurried away with its prize while Mia burst into laughter at my startled reaction. "Maybe it's trying to tell us something," she teased between giggles that I couldn't help but join in her laughter despite the awkwardness of the moment. "Yeah. Like maybe we should stick to takeout next time." But beneath the humor lay an undeniable tension, one that made my heart race even faster than before. As we settled back into our picnic blanket amidst scattered crackers and fruit slices, I knew I had to confront my feelings head-on. "Mia," I started again, this time more determinedly. "I really like spending time with you. Like, really like you." Her expression softened as she looked at me intently. "You mean like, as in crush-like?" "Yes," I exclaimed, feeling both relieved and terrified at how easily those words had slipped out. I mean, it's ridiculous. I know we've been friends and all, but there's this connection between us that feels different. For a moment, silence enveloped us as Mia processed what I had just confessed. My heart raced in anticipation of her response. Would she laugh it off? Would she feel the same way? Finally, she spoke softly, her eyes sparkling with emotion. "You're not ridiculous at all," she said earnestly. I felt it too, but didn't know how to say anything without ruining what we have. Relief washed over me like a wave as her words sank in. "Really? You feel it too?" "Absolutely," she replied with a shy smile that made my heart flutter even more. Just then, another squirrel appeared, this one bolder than the last, and made a beeline for our picnic basket. In an attempt to shoo it away before it could wreak havoc on our remaining snacks, I jumped up too quickly and tripped over my own feet. "Whoa!" Mia exclaimed as she rushed forward to catch me before I could completely faceplant into the grass. "Thanks for saving me." I laughed sheepishly while trying to regain my balance. "You're welcome. But maybe let's avoid any further acrobatics while discussing feelings." She teased lightly that we both burst into laughter again, this time filled with relief and joy rather than awkwardness, and in that moment of shared vulnerability mixed with humor, everything felt right. As we settled back down onto the blanket once more, this time closer together, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something beautiful between us, with newfound courage bubbling inside me from our earlier conversation, and perhaps fueled by the lingering adrenaline from my near accident. I leaned closer to Mia and whispered playfully, "So, does this mean we can start planning our future culinary adventures together?" She grinned widely at me before nudging my shoulder playfully. "Only if you promise not to trip over your own feet again." "I make no promises," I replied dramatically before leaning in slightly closer again, a gesture that felt both exhilarating and terrifying all at once. In that moment beneath the sprawling oak tree, with laughter dancing in the air around us, we shared not just food but dreams of what could be, an unspoken promise that this connection would only deepen from here on out. The sun began its descent behind the horizon as we continued talking about everything from food preferences to future plans, each word weaving us closer together until finally settling into comfortable silence filled only by gentle laughter and soft smiles exchanged between two hearts ready for whatever came next. In the days following our picnic revelation, everything felt different yet wonderfully familiar. Mia and I were no longer just friends navigating culinary chaos, we were two people exploring the exhilarating territory of a budding romance. However, with every new layer of our relationship came a fresh set of challenges, some humorous, some awkward, and some that forced us to confront our insecurities. The first challenge arose unexpectedly during one of our regular cooking nights at Jess's house. We had decided to tackle homemade pizza, which seemed like a safe and delicious choice. As we gathered our ingredients, dough, sauce, cheese, and an array of toppings, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jess had been acting strangely all week, and I could sense she was up to something. "Okay, what's going on?" I asked Mia as we rolled out the dough together. "Jess has been acting like she's planning a surprise party or something." Mia chuckled as she sprinkled flour over the dough. "Maybe she's just trying to make sure you don't burn down the kitchen again." "Hey! That was one time." I protested, but I couldn't help but laugh. "I promise I'm a better cook now." Just then, Jess burst into the kitchen, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Guess what? I invited some friends over for pizza night. They should be here any minute." I froze mid-roll. "Wait, what? You invited people without telling us?" Mia shot me a look that said, "This is going to be interesting, surprise." Jess exclaimed, clearly proud of her spontaneous decision. "I thought it would be fun to have a little gathering." "Fun? More like chaotic." I replied with mock horror as I glanced around at our half-prepared pizza ingredients. Mia laughed and nudged me playfully. "Relax. We can handle it. Besides, it'll be great to show off our pizza-making skills." As Jess began setting up chairs around the dining table, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. What if our friends didn't understand our dynamic? What if they made things awkward? And what if they realized how much my feelings for Mia had grown? Before I could spiral too far into my thoughts, the doorbell rang, and Jess rushed to answer it. A group of our mutual friends filed in, loud and boisterous, each one bringing their own energy into the room. Among them was Sarah, an old friend from college who always had an uncanny ability to sense when things were about to get complicated. "Hey everyone." Sarah called out as she entered, her eyes immediately landing on Mia and me standing awkwardly by the counter. "What's cooking?" "Pizza," Jess announced proudly as she began handing out toppings like a game show host. "Nice. Can I help?" Sarah asked enthusiastically. "Sure. Just don't let me catch you putting pineapple on your pizza," I joked, trying to lighten the mood. "Oh come on. Pineapple is life." Sarah shot back with a laugh. As we all began assembling our pizzas amidst laughter and playful banter, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness bubbling inside me. Mia stood beside me, her presence grounding yet electrifying as we worked together to create our masterpieces, but then Sarah leaned in closer while spreading sauce on her dough. "So," she said conspiratorially, glancing between Mia and me with a knowing smile. "How's it going with you two?" My heart raced at her question. Did she know about my feelings? Had Jess told her? I shot Mia a quick glance, her expression mirrored my own surprise. "We're just friends." I blurted out too quickly, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. Mia raised an eyebrow at me but didn't say anything. Instead, she focused on her pizza toppings while trying to suppress a smile. "Just friends?" Sarah echoed teasingly. "You sure about that?" I opened my mouth to respond but was interrupted by Jess shouting from across the room, "Hey everyone. Time for a pizza taste test." With that distraction, we all gathered around the table to sample each other's creations, laughter echoing through the room as we critiqued each slice with exaggerated seriousness. But as the night wore on and more friends arrived, including some who had brought dessert, I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's question lingered in the air like an uninvited guest. It wasn't until later in the evening when things took an unexpected turn. As we settled down after dinner, full and happy, Jess suggested we play a game of charades. The idea was met with enthusiastic cheers from everyone except me. My stomach twisted at the thought of being put on display in front of all our friends. "Come on. It'll be fun," Jess insisted as she handed out slips of paper for everyone to write down phrases or movie titles. Mia leaned closer to me and whispered playfully, "Don't worry. I'll be your partner." Her words sent butterflies fluttering wildly in my stomach as we joined forces for the game. But when it was finally our turn to act out a phrase chosen by Jess, a romantic movie title, I felt my heart race even more than before. "Okay," Mia said confidently as she glanced at the slip of paper before looking at me with a mischievous grin. "Let's see if we can nail this." As Mia began mimicking exaggerated romantic gestures, complete with dramatic sighs and swooning motions, I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous we both looked. But then something shifted. Suddenly it felt less like just acting and more like, well, us. That I leaned into her performance, matching her energy while trying not to think about how much I wanted this moment to last forever. But then came my turn to act out a phrase while Mia watched intently, and there was no way I could focus with those beautiful eyes on me. I and my nervousness, and perhaps due to my earlier confession, I ended up mimicking an awkward proposal scene that involved way too many hand gestures and over-the-top expressions, much to everyone's amusement when it finally dawned on me what I was doing. Pretending to propose in front of all our friends, I froze mid-gesture as laughter erupted around us. "Oh no!" Mia exclaimed between giggles. "You're going to give them ideas." I felt heat rush to my cheeks again as Jess shouted from across the room, "Are you two secretly engaged?" "No." I blurted out too quickly again while trying desperately not to laugh at how absurd everything felt at that moment. But then something shifted in Mia's expression, a mix of surprise and delight, as she leaned in closer and whispered teasingly, "Well, maybe we should consider it." The laughter around us faded momentarily as her words hung in the air like magic, and suddenly it felt like everything had changed again. My heart raced wildly at her playful suggestion. Was this really happening? before I could respond or process what had just been said, or how much truth lay behind those words, Sarah jumped in with another question. So are you two officially dating now? The room fell silent for just a moment before laughter erupted once more, but this time it felt different. It felt charged with possibility. Mia caught my eye again, a silent understanding passing between us, and suddenly everything else faded into background noise as we shared a moment filled with unspoken promises and excitement for what lay ahead after charades wrapped up, with plenty of laughter still echoing through the room. Things gradually began winding down as friends started saying their goodbyes. But amidst all the chaos and fun, one thing became clear. This night had brought us closer together than ever before, and despite any misunderstandings or awkward moments along the way, we were ready for whatever came next. As everyone filed out of Jess's apartment, including Sarah, who winked knowingly at us, I turned toward Mia with newfound determination bubbling inside me. I think we should talk, I said softly but firmly as we stood alone in the kitchen surrounded by remnants of our chaotic evening. She nodded slowly before glancing around nervously as if considering how best to approach this conversation, but there was no need for hesitation anymore. We both knew what needed to be said. Mia, I began again, taking a deep breath before continuing earnestly. About earlier, when Sarah asked if we were dating, I think maybe we should consider it. Her eyes widened slightly before breaking into that beautiful smile that made my heart flutter once more. A smile filled with warmth and understanding that told me everything would be okay. I'd like that, she replied softly before stepping closer until there was barely any space left between us. A moment suspended in time where everything else faded away until it was just us standing together under soft kitchen lights filled only by laughter lingering in our hearts. And in that moment, with all its uncertainty yet undeniable promise, we embraced not just each other but everything that lay ahead, the chaos of life intertwined with love waiting patiently just beyond reach, ready for us both to take hold together hand in hand, ready for whatever adventures awaited next. As the weeks turned into months, Mia and I settled into our new relationship with a delightful ease. Our cooking nights transformed from chaotic experiments into joyful collaborations, where we not only created meals but also memories filled with laughter and love. Each evening was a blend of playful banter, culinary successes, and occasional disasters, and heartfelt moments that deepened our connection. One sunny Saturday afternoon, as we prepared for another cooking adventure, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed since that fateful picnic. I was no longer just the awkward friend fumbling through life. I was someone who had found joy in vulnerability and strength in love. All right, chef, Mia said, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she leaned against the kitchen counter. What are we making today? Something adventurous or safe? Let's go adventurous, I replied, feeling bold. How about homemade sushi? Mia raised an eyebrow in mock skepticism. Sushi? Are you sure you're ready for that level of culinary chaos? Absolutely. What could possibly go wrong? I grinned, recalling our many mishaps over the months. As we gathered our ingredients, rice, seaweed, fresh vegetables, and fish, I couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement. This was more than just cooking, it was a celebration of everything we had built together. We started rolling the sushi, and of course, it quickly turned into a hilarious mess. Rice flew everywhere, and I somehow managed to get avocado stuck to my forehead in the process. Nice look. Mia laughed as she snapped a quick picture of my ridiculousness. You're really rocking that avocado chic. I feigned offense. Hey. This is a fashion statement. Avocado is very in right now. After much laughter and several failed attempts at rolling sushi, we finally produced a platter that looked somewhat edible, if you squinted hard enough and ignored the odd shapes. With our sushi creation laid out before us, we settled down at the dining table to enjoy our hard work. As we took our first bites, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride mixed with amusement. Okay, this isn't half bad, I admitted after swallowing my first piece. Though it's definitely not winning any awards for presentation. Mia grinned at me over her plate. Who needs awards when you have love and laughter? Just then, Jess burst through the door with her usual flair. What smells so good? Are you two finally making something edible? Only if you're brave enough to try it. I called back playfully. Jess approached cautiously as if entering a war zone. After taking a tentative bite, her eyes widened in surprise. Wow! This is actually good. You've both come a long way from that disaster lasagna. Mia and I exchanged knowing glances filled with laughter. Our culinary journey had been anything but smooth, but it had brought us closer together. As we enjoyed our meal together, Jess casually mentioned something that made my heart swell with happiness. You know, she said between bites of sushi, I've never seen you two this happy before. Mia smiled at me warmly, and I felt my cheeks flush at the compliment. It was true, being with Mia had brought out a side of me I never knew existed, a side that embraced joy and vulnerability without fear. After dinner, we all settled on the couch for an impromptu movie night, one of Jess's favorite rom-coms that she insisted was essential viewing for any budding relationship. The movie played on screen filled with cheesy lines and predictable plots. Mia leaned against me comfortably while Jess occasionally chimed in with witty commentary. Isn't this just like us? Jess teased at one particularly ridiculous scene where the characters found themselves in an absurd misunderstanding except for the part where they almost break up over something silly. I replied with a grin as I glanced at Mia and nudged me playfully. Hey now. We're not breaking up over anything silly, unless it involves pineapple on pizza again. Laughter erupted around us as we reminisced about our earlier cooking adventures, the flour fights, the overly spicy pasta sauce, and all those moments that had brought us here. As the credits rolled on the movie and Jess began to doze off on the couch, I turned to Mia with a smile that felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. I'm really glad we took that leap, I said softly, my heart full of gratitude for everything we had shared. Mia looked at me with warmth in her eyes. Me too. It's been an adventure, and I wouldn't want to share it with anyone else. In that moment of quiet intimacy, everything felt right, the laughter, the love, and even the chaos that seemed to follow us wherever we went. If on cue, Jess stirred awake just in time to hear us whispering sweet nothings to each other. She groaned dramatically before rolling her eyes playfully. Ugh. Can you two save the mushy stuff for later? Some of us are trying to sleep. Mia and I exchanged amused glances before bursting into laughter again, our joy filling the room like music. And as Jess settled back down on the couch while muttering about needing earplugs for our future romantic escapades, I couldn't help but think about how far we'd come since that first awkward encounter at the potluck. Life wasn't perfect, it was messy and unpredictable, but it was also filled with love and laughter that made every moment worthwhile, with Mia by my side and adventures waiting just around the corner. Whether they involved cooking disasters or romantic comedies, I felt ready to embrace whatever life had in store for us next. As we cleaned up after dinner, still giggling over our sushi creations, I made a mental note to always remember one important lesson. Sometimes life's greatest joys come from embracing chaos together, and maybe even wearing avocado on your forehead every now and then wasn't such a bad thing after all.